Well. I know y'all wasn't expecting this. See how I'm looking all got the grizzly going on? That's all right. That's all right. I'm gonna, cut the hair a little low, trim the beard down just a little bit. But look who we got here, people. They're none. They only Priest Danyaahla. Priest Danyaahla.
Thank you, because that was started by Polite man calling me Danyaahla. That's not my name. I'm saying no disrespect, but that's not my name. My name is Danyaahla, which
So
is Hebrew for Daniel. Dan is judge. Yah is he, and Allah is power. So it's like saying, transliterated into English, that's God is my judge.
there you go. We're gonna make sure we do this and get it set up right. So basically, let's jump right into it. Y'all see the name of the title.
Let's do it.
And I like doing those untold stories because you always hear people talking about the person. Oh, how come we don't know this about them, that about them? Where the hell this person come from? They're an agent.
Yeah.
So, Priest Danyaahla, I want you to take time, say hello to the people. My guest tonight is Priest Danyaahla. Lions of Israel is his camp. They hold it down mainly in the Bronx. I believe that's fair to say.
We're in the Bronx. We also have a camp in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as well, and we'll be opening up some other ones real soon. So stay tuned for that.
My man, show them that hat, man. That's
Right.
a pretty cool hat.
It's the hat right here. You know what I'm saying? I have a business called Hebrew Crowns. You can find us on Etsy.com, Hebrew Crowns, at Etsy.com, etsy.com/Hebrew Crowns. You can find these there. Also, I'll be launching my website next month, and you'll be able to find all the flavors over there as well. So check that out, family.
Just hats?
I have hats, I have scarves, I have, head wraps for women. That's where I've started, but it's going to expand as time goes on. But that's what I'm dealing with right now. I don't want to put my hands in too many different pots because then something is going to wind up getting burned.
All right, people, no excuses. Support black business.
All day.
Before we start out, where can the people reach you? Let's go down the list. Facebook.
Facebook, you can find me at Daniel Benjamin on Facebook.
That's Daniel, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin. Y'all should know how to spell Benjamin.
Right. They found your page. They should know how to spell Benjamin, or else something's wrong.
There you go. Group is Lion of Israel.
The camp is Lions of Israel.
Website.
The website is thelionsofisrael.com. Again, that's thelionsofisrael.com.
THELIONSOFISRAEL.com.
That's right.
So I don't hear nobody talk about, they try to log on, couldn't get it. I gave y'all the correct spelling. Email.
My email is Daniel Benjamin, the number 12, tribes with an S. Daniel Benjamin 12 tribes at gmail.com.
So again, that's Daniel Benjamin 12 tribes at gmail.com. All right. One of the most important things, YouTube channel, Maccabeestv. You got somebody that hook up the Maccabeestv, got it revamped and ready, giving people that good content. I'm seeing a lot of information you're putting out there.
Yeah.
So, YouTube channel, Maccabeestv. Go ahead,
You can find us on YouTube at Maccabeestv.com. That's the general page that I use where I interview a cross section of people, similar to what you see on this page right here, similar to what you see on Sonetta's channel, so forth and so on. Then of course I have my own personal YouTube page, which is Yahweh's Watchman. Okay, and I'll spell that for you. YAHAWAS Watchman, WATCHMEN, and that's on YouTube, so you can check that out as well. All right. If you have any problems with any of these things that I'm saying and you're interested, just inbox me on Facebook, Daniel Benjamin, and I'll give you the forwarding. I'll give you the forwarding information.
All right, I see the room already buzzing. It's filling up. You got your boy Quatazop on here. You probably don't remember him.
Of course I remember this dude, man. Come on, man. That's my dude. We came up, man, as young men in the school, man. We were in our early 20s in the school back in the days. So of course I remember him, man. That's what's up. You know, peace to that brother, man.
And that's the same thing he told me.
Yeah.
He said just like that. Y'all came up from young men going up, and he speak highly of you. He said you're a very good brother, and you definitely stand for truth, righteousness. You know,
That's a good
all
thing,
that
man.
good stuff.
And all the same goes for that brother as well, man. It's been a long time, man. So, you know, maybe one day if it be the Most High's will, he and I will cross paths again, man. But you know, yeah, I'm still standing up for this. I'm still standing up for this, and I will, as long as there's air in my lungs, I'm gonna stand up for truth and for my people.
All right, Priest Danyaahla. Now, people seen you commit on trial. You're going at it with Shaka Utmost. You're going at it with so many people. But the reason why I say Shaka Utmost, because, you know, that dude really stand hard. When you really watch people that push and talk that comedic stuff and dealing with certain teachings, it's two people that I really know that do go hard on it, and that's Dr. Reggie. But the one that really go extra hard, where they'll wear the way they wear their hair, the clothing, is Shaka Utmost. And that brother really, he really shows like, okay, I'm not just talking it, I'm about it. You understand? So if people want to talk about the Hebrew Israelites wearing the garbs from back then, standing on the corner, they'll have to get at Shaka Utmost, which I hear people looking to get at him. But you know, that brother is standing for something. So you know, it's basically don't just talk about it, be about it.
That's right.
So we're gonna get into a few things, man. Okay, people, tonight, the untold story of Priest Danyaahla, joelbenjamin528. I'm your man, aka MC Spookism. All right, let's just jump right in. So, Priest Danyaahla, talk to the people, man. Who is Priest Danyaahla?
All right. Well, first of all, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the supreme being of the universe, Yahweh. We call his name to Yahweh in the name of his beneficent Son, my King, my Savior, my leader, Yahweh Shai, Jesus Christ. My name is Priest Danyaahla, aka Daniel Benjamin. I've been in the Israelite movement now for over 25 years. I came into this movement when I was a teenager. How I came into this movement was that I originally, well, let's start off in high school. In high school, I was the president of the African Awareness Club. Knew nothing about being an Israelite, nothing about it whatsoever. You know, I used to see Israelites in my town. I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. They call that money earner Mount Vernon. You know, the place where Heavy D comes from, Albie Shore, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, you know, Ahmad Rashad, Felicia Rashad, all those people come up from up there. And there was some Israelites in town, but it wasn't really a big thing. The big thing, of course, was the Afrocentric movement in high school. So sometime around the 10th grade, I began to get a little conscious. What made me become conscious was I saw people passing around those pamphlets that Dr. York used to hand out. There was some people that was in my classes that were members of the Ansar community. So when they would come to class, they would have some of the books, and I would look through the books, and I would see the black images inside the books of all the people in the Bible, and it blew my mind because my family raised me as a Christian. My family is West Indian. Both my parents are from Jamaica. You know, I never really tell people that unless they ask. Not that I'm hiding it, just people just, tend to assume that I'm just American. But I was born here, but my family is from Jamaica. I was the only one in my family that was born here. So, my family, from being from Jamaica, you know that they love Caesar Borgia, that white image of Christ. They love that white image of Christ. And I came up loving that white image of Christ. And in my church, that white image of Christ was everywhere. It was on the wall. In the summertime, when it got hot, it was on the fan. It was on the front of the Sunday school book. It was everywhere that you look. It was in the clock. It was everywhere, man. On the pulpit, you name it. The rug, Caesar was everywhere. So I grew up believing in white Jesus and white people in the Bible. That's a fact. Until I ran into these people that was studying under Dr. York, and they had those books. So it just really kind of blew my mind. So one day, as a teenager, being inquisitive as I was, I went and I asked the pastor, was Christ black? And he said to me, yeah. So I was really baffled Because here it is, I'm looking around this church my whole life growing up. Everywhere you look, you see Caesar Borgia, but you standing there telling me that Christ is black. So now you played yourself.
So he was honest with you. He did tell you the truth.
Yeah, he did tell me the truth, but he played himself. So from that time on, I was done with Christianity. So I had some friends that were 5%ers at the time. And being that we were into rap, you know, all of our favorite rap groups are 5%ers. You know, I grew up listening to Brand Nubians, Big Daddy Kane, Eric B. and Rakim, Poor Righteous Teachers, so forth and so on. I grew up on that. I was weaned off of that. And we started rapping. And we rapped, and we were 5%ers, and the name of our group was called Masters of the Universe. All right. And so we was dealing with the 5% thing, and we was working at a job somewhere in New Rochelle, like a call center or something in New Rochelle, New York. And what happened was you had 2 rappers that were working at New Rochelle at this place that were signed, but they had been dropped by their record label. The name of the group is called Grayson and Jason, Greysun, and Jason, Jason. They were a rap group that was signed, and they had a song that came out, and the name of the song was called, they were on Atlantic Records, and the name of the song that came out was called Going Out or Living Like a Trooper. So these dudes had a record deal, they lost their record deal, they were looking for another record deal, and we were all working in the same place. So these dudes invited us to come and start recording with them. So me and my partner at the time, who's also in the camp with me now, being 5%ers, we would go over to their house and we would record music. So everybody was shocked when they saw me do that rap video recently, but they don't know that I was rapping when I was younger. I retired from it. Some of the younger brothers in my camp kind of pulled my leg to get back into it and do something. So I did just for the fun of it. But that's how I came into this thing. I was rapping. So what happened was, us being 5%ers, we would go there and we would record with them. And we found out that these dudes was Israelites. Now, I had seen the Israelites in the streets many, many times. I used to go down to Times Square in 89, 90, 91, and I would see these dudes dressed in black with spikes standing on the corner cursing white people out. And I thought they were crazy. I said to myself, yo, I was walking down Times Square one time, and they said to some white man, "You're the devil, you're the devil." That was a little small white guy. And I looked, and there was another white guy that's about 6'6", as big as daggone Hulk Hogan, coming down the block. So I said, I'm going to stand here, and I'm going to see if they call this dude the devil. And he walked past, and they said, "You're the devil, you're the devil." I was like, these dudes are crazy. They handed me a flyer, walked away, never thought nothing of it. This is like around 89, 90, around that time.
What camp was that by any chance?
At the time, I've come to find out when I came to the school that was the Mount Zion camp. For anybody that attended 1 West on 125th Street, the camp that was on 42nd and 8th, right? The name of that camp is called Mount Zion. That's what they were, 42nd and 8th. All right. The head of that camp was a man by the name of Aharon. You know, and these guys were just, you know, crazy. You know, there was also another camp around the corner on 42nd. No, they're actually on 45th and Broadway. That was the main camp. And you had the main elders of 1 West out there. But anyway, I saw that, but I didn't come into the truth then in 89, 90. So again, when I started rapping with these dudes, I found out that they were Israelites. So they were producing some tracks for us. We was having a good time, the whole nine. Then one day, the main producer said, "Listen, man, we making all these records for you. We ain't making another record till you come to the school." I was like, "We ain't going to that daggone Israelite school, man. The Bible is a myth. The Bible is fake. The white man wrote the Bible." All the same stuff I hear in the conscious community today. All the same jargon. I used to say it. That's why y'all
can't. So you're part of the conscious community.
To an extent, yeah.
All right, continue.
To an extent, yeah. This is why none of these guys could come at me with that. Whatever you're going to say, I'm already prepared to answer it because I said it. And I had to eat my words. The same way I made Shaka eat his words when he said King James was a homosexual. And then we did the PowerPoint presentation and we showed that he didn't know what he's talking about. The same way, with all due respect, no disrespect, because we are cordial right now. The same way I had to make Polite eat his words when he said that King James is afraid of fairies. Then we did a lecture on that and showed that he didn't even bother to read that book.
But hold up. Now them two brothers did a rebuttal?
No.
You,
in order for let's deal with Polite. In order for him to do a rebuttal, he'd have to go in that book and show us what he said. That's not in there. I have the book. That's not in there. So he lied. And what
about Shaka?
Well, Shaka did a presentation where he used second and third hand sources, no primaries.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? To say that King James was a homosexual.
But I'm talking about, did he do a rebuttal?
Of course not. Because he got to deal with the primaries. He cannot do a rebuttal unless he deals with all the primary evidence that I showed, where people at the time were saying that the guy that made the accusation was a demon. He was sick. He was evil. All that stuff. You got to deal with that stuff. because you're using his work to say a man is a homosexual, but the very people at the time are telling you that that man was not to be trusted. You're going to have to deal with that. You ain't going to skip over that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
So, you know,
continue.
So, you know, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, you know, I heard all that jargon and stuff like that. So the brothers.
So, I'm sorry, I just gotta go in. So the same thing, the arguments that you're hearing now, when you're on different channels, YouTube channels, or in the streets or whatever, you used to give those same lines.
Yes, I used to give those same lines, the exact same lines. Okay. King James is a white man. He was a homosexual. He slept with his mother. That's another one, man. King James slept with his mother, except his mother didn't raise him. He didn't see his mother after he was 12 years old. Ice Cube put that nonsense out there. You know, no disrespect to that brother.
Really?
Maybe one day you may interview him. But he did a song, I believe it's called When I Get to Heaven. It was on the, it wasn't on the Death Certificate album. It was on the album that came after Death Certificate, right? He had a song called When I Get to Heaven. You know, he said something, King James has sex with his mother. Is that your addition? Is that your religion? Black man, you got to make a decision. I remember that vividly. I remember that vividly. Line for line, man, because that was a hot album. I'm not a hater. It was a hot album. You see what I'm saying? But it's disinformation. Because if you do the basic information on King James, his mother didn't raise him after 12 years old because his mother was locked up in prison because she conspired against his father and had his father assassinated so that she could be with her lover. You see what I'm saying? So these are things that we taught, or I said before I actually went down and researched and I studied. So I'm very prepared when people come at me with the nonsense, and people come on the comment boards with the nonsense all the time. Now you know what I do on YouTube? I copy and paste all the lectures that I've given. When somebody come on Facebook and say something stupid, I don't even have to answer you. Copy and paste. Watch the lecture. Shut your mouth and watch the lecture, straight up and down, and rebut the lecture with primaries. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear nothing else. But going back, and I'm almost finished with the story. I'm gonna summarize it real quick. The brother said he wouldn't produce any more records for us, being 5% unless we came to the school. So me and my man was like, you know what? We're gonna go to the daggone school, man, so this dude could produce more records for us because the dude was hot. So we went to one class, and when I went to that class, I was blown away. It was a Monday night. At the time, it was High Priest Lahab that was teaching. And I was blown away so much and so impressed with what I heard and I saw, and the unity and the brotherhood and all that stuff, that I said to myself, I said, you know what? I'm going to come back. And I went back that Friday, and I was in High Priest Yeshaya's class on a Friday. In Yeshaya's class, the brother Quatazop could, verify this if he's still watching. Yeshaya's class was joke central. You go up in there, man, you're going to hear joke after joke after joke after joke after joke, but it rejuvenated, made you feel good, especially if you had a long week. So I was hooked, and Yeshaya was up in that classroom making all types of statements that at the time, again, I thought he was crazy. He was the first person I ever heard say that King James is black. First person. I said, this guy is out of his mind. This guy said that Ivan the Terrible was black and his son was black and all these different statements he was making. And I was so impressed that I said to myself, I'm going to come back till he proved that. I'm going to keep coming here till he proved that. And the more I went to class and the more information that began to come out, I was hooked. And I never left. And that was in 1991 going into 92. That's the story of how I became an Israelite.
And what camp was that you joined?
When I was in One West, I was in a camp called...
One West.
Well, I was in One West 125th Street. That's the first Israelite school I ever went to. And the camp that I was in One West was a camp by the name of the Children of Israel. We used to set up on Fridays at 45th and Broadway. 44th and Broadway, right there on the corner. Right to the entrance to where you have to go to MTV right there. I don't know if that's still there, but I believe that MTV is still there. We used to set up right there, 44th and Broadway, right in the middle of Times Square. And on Saturdays, we would go to Yonkers in Westchester County, and we would teach out there. And that's the story of how I became an Israelite. And when I became an Israelite, I eventually dropped all the teachings of the 5% and the Afrocentric perspective that I had, because brothers were able to prove and substantiate the things that they were saying, and those things were undeniable. And a lot of times the reason why people say that we as Israelites, we can't prove things is because you don't have an open mind. If somebody says A, B, C, and D, put them on the hot seat and make them prove it before you open your mouth, and then you have to put your foot inside of it. You see, it's very, very important.
All right, so you get on your journey, you're doing what you're doing. I know you had to start battling a few people. family members, probably some of those same people that enlighten you from the Nuwaubians.
I started battling everybody. The first time, and anybody that's an Israelite knows this struggle. You come into the truth and you learn one or two scriptures, right? And then you want to go battle. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, 100% honesty. I'll be honest. When I first I came to the truth in, I'd say, September. November, which is 2 months later, I was still had one foot in Israel, 1 foot in the world, because I was still waking up. You know what I'm saying? I went to a Thanksgiving dinner with my family. Now somebody like, you went to that? Well, listen, again, I had just came in. I didn't know better. You know what I'm saying? So I went to a family gathering for Thanksgiving, right? And I have Christian family members. So I called myself trying to show them this information, and they wiped the floor with me. Wiped the floor. And it was a great learning experience for me, because I realized that I was not prepared to take on battles. I really need to sit back and really learn this knowledge before I tried to battle people. But I've had so many wars and so many battles with so many people before YouTube was ever created. I came into this truth in 91, 92. YouTube came around in 2007. So you know how many battles that we fought? There's no video for that stuff, man. You know how many battles I fought against the Nuwaubians as they went through their different schools of thought, as they went through the damn Ansar community. They became the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, that when they went through the Masonic stage and the Moorish stage and all the different schools of thought. And now this dude has rejected all of his teachings and is coming with new books. Why? Because the books that he came with have been debunked. Those books have been, I'm talking about Dr. York.
Now,
yes, those books have been debunked. So now he's coming with brand new books. How the hell did you have right knowledge if you update the information?
While he's still in prison, you talking about?
Yeah, he's still writing books. He's still writing books. You go to their table, they got brand new books or brand new series. They're not even dealing with the books they wrote in the 90s and the 2000s. They're not even dealing with that information no more. They say that information is outdated, but at the time you said it was right knowledge.
That's what I'm now about to say. How could it be right knowledge and then you say it's outdated?
Because it was BS. Because the information was BS, man, and you cannot substantiate 90% of the stuff that dude was saying. It's unsubstantiated. First of all, he's one of the biggest plagiarizers. People want to talk about plagiarizing. He's one of the biggest plagiarizers in the community. There's so many people whose work he plagiarized as his own and didn't credit with sources, but now it's coming out where that work comes from. Okay, everybody from Zachariah Stitchin to Alistair Crowley, you know what I'm saying? You name it. This dude was stealing from everybody. All right, and also, I went into this in an interview that never came out. There's a lot of questions about that holy tablets that they deal with. There's some really questionable stuff in there. I think I'll save it for another time, but there's some really questionable stuff in there. Like, they can't even ask me nothing about the Bible. I mean, don't even ask me with the stuff that you have in them holy tablets, and I have them, by the way. I wouldn't ask me no questions about the Bible. I wouldn't even speak against the Bible. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Well, one of the things I knew that I want to find out if you were one of those type of Hebrews when the whole thing, Dr. York, was the different changes, like you said. It had one point the man said he was Jesus. He was these different etheric beings. He was talking about the chariots, the same thing like what people would say is UFOs. He was saying that these things were basically certain beings and whatnot. What were, I don't want to say you because I know it was a camp. Did the camp had any problems with him, especially saying him being Jesus? Did you have a problem with that back in the days? Like, did any, after you got in, was there anything, because they were pretty big, if I'm not mistaken, back then, bigger than the Israelites. Did anything there affect you and say, you know what, maybe this guy is Jesus, or maybe this Nuwaubian stuff is where it's at? Have you ever wanted to get out of it because of certain information from that big group?
Hell no, man. We knew that there was flaws in information in the early 90s. There was all types of flaws in his books. All you could go, first of all, the things that he was saying about the Bible was felonious. A lot of the stuff that he was saying about the Bible was felonious. His breakdowns of words in the Hebrew were felonious. Okay, so we knew right away back then that the whole doctrine was totally off. And also we would talk to a lot of his followers, and a lot of people was leaving the organization even back then. So no, I never was tempted to join that organization whatsoever. The dude said he's the lamb. The dude portrayed, if you go into his books, half the pictures of the people is his face. It's his face. You know what I'm saying? Different variations of his face. The same thing that was done with Caesar Borgia is the same thing. It's different variations of his face and his family members in those books as the prophets of the Bible, the people in the Quran, so forth and so on, man.
Yeah.
You know, when you listen, man, this dude said that there's a race of beings called the fuzzy wuzzies. Just think about that. The fuzzy wuzzies. You know what I'm saying? How do you prove that?
Did he get into what the fuzzy wuzzies were?
Yeah, he has a whole book on just different races of extraterrestrials. You know, that he came out with back in the days. I could not say the name of the book.
Group of Scientology when they start talking about all that other stuff.
They got he has all types of extraterrestrials with cone heads. Remember, he had a show in the 90s called the Cone Heads and everything. He said that was Saturday Night Live. He has a race of extraterrestrials like the Cone Heads. He has something called the Fuzzy Wuzzies, the Shaggies, the this, the that. It was just madness. It was nothing for me to want to be a part of that, especially when he wasn't proving half that stuff.
So now this goes to my next thing, because people were saying you was part of High Priest Yeshaya's group, correct?
Well, he wasn't the head, but he was in the group, so I'll say to an extent yes, but he wasn't the leader.
Okay. People would say, well, how could you say that about Dr. York, Priest Danyaahla, when you were part of something back then, and they found this man to be the things he was saying would be crazy, which is High Priest Yeshaya. High Priest Yeshaya was saying some off stuff. So how were you able to decipher what was really right and what was really wrong when High Priest Yeshaya, he was talking about UFOs, started calling them what? IFOs? Identified flying objects.
I don't have a problem with the
I know, but because
UFO
it's
thing.
in the scriptures, people would say, well, Dr. York wrote it and he had squirrels, right? So how were you at that age, at that time, say, okay, this is where it's at, this is not where it's at? Because both was talking about extraterrestrials or angelic beings or different entities. One was saying that he was like the actual Lamb, Jesus, and the different etheric beings and whatnot. How were you able to make that connection to where you needed to stay from where you didn't need to stay, being that some of the stuff was so similar?
Because the Israelites only went as far as identifying the fact that UFOs do exist and what is called extraterrestrials, which the Bible calls them angels, do exist. So if Dr. York went that far, then I would applaud and commend him. But when he began to classify UFOs extraterrestrials into different groups, and some of these groups are pale Caucasian, some, and all these different things, some of them are hairy and shaggy looking like werewolves and different things like that, he went too far, because that group said that they were dealing with right knowledge. That group said that everything that they said was a fact. They said they only dealt with facts. They only dealt with science and they dealt with facts. But then when you ask them to substantiate something like that, they couldn't substantiate it.
Hold on.
They couldn't prove it.
Hold on, Priest Danyaahla. Now we're doing the untold story about you. Right. Be very careful of what you're saying from what you bring up from your past. We don't want people to say, well, I'm going to challenge him on this, because I don't know if you're prepared to back up what you're saying. Listen,
it's not on me to substantiate those different races of beings in his book. It's up to them to substantiate it. I don't have to substantiate. I didn't make the claim. I didn't make the claim. It's up to me to substantiate what I say. If I make a claim that A, B, C, and D is true, and I'm teaching that to people as a fact, then I must substantiate that. But if I'm challenging you on something you're teaching, the onus is not on me, it's on you. So I say, let's find that book. Let's get the title of that book with all those different races of extraterrestrials, and somebody come forward and prove to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that those races of aliens exist. That's the onus is on them, not me.
So then, all right, because if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you're what they call a Messianic Jew or Hebrew.
I'm a Hebrew Israelite. All Hebrew Israelites are Messianic. So let me be fair. All Hebrew Israelites are Messianic. The question is, who was the Messiah? That's the question.
So
you have some Israelites
you believe
Torah
that
based.
What people call Jesus Christ is the Messiah, correct?
I believe that the Christ, the son of Mary and Joseph, is the Messiah. Yes, I do believe that. Whereas Messianic, Torah-based Israelites, they don't believe that the Messiah has come yet. They still believe that the Messiah is to come.
Okay. It was just a question on what's the Messiah. So wasn't that confusing for you growing up? That you have one group saying, oh, okay, Christ is not the Messiah, y'all bugging over there. And the next group saying Christ is the Messiah. Y'all are the people why the Messiah, that type of attitude is why the Messiah dead. Like, how did that take a toll on you? How I'm trying to find out what was your mind state at that time.
Okay, well, I could say honestly, I didn't have a lot of exposure to Torah-based Israelites until the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I didn't. I really. Okay, well, remember, I was raised a Christian, so of course the Christians embraced the entire Bible, the Old and the New Testament, minus the Apocrypha. So I already had that foundation built in. I walked into or was brought into an Israelite group that embraced the Old and the New Testament, minus the Apocrypha. As I'm gonna mention the brother Nasi Yashuvel for a moment because he's expounded on this before as well. So it's not just something I'm saying. We looked at, from our perspective as Messianic Hebrew Israelites that believed in Christ, Yahushua, the son of Mary and Joseph, we looked at these Old Testament or Torah-based Israelites as enemies. So I wouldn't even have had a conversation with those brothers at all. I wasn't talking with you. I wasn't hanging with you. I wasn't none of that stuff. And Nasi will tell you that they were raised the same way. They didn't. He would tell you. He said this many times, so I'm not putting words in his mouth. He said in high school he hung out with Decepticons and all that and gang members before he would hang out with the Messianic Hebrews. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to them. What really broke down the middle wall of partition for me was the Kemet on trial debate. Really before that.
So wait a minute.
Wait, let me take it back. Okay. Sorry. When the brother Tazariak did his debate with Polite, right, and he won that debate, and everybody said he won the debate at the time. Now people trying to tap dance and change the story, becoming historical revisionist. We all know at the time everybody said that Tazariak won that debate. So, and I remember who said what. So if you change that now, you lying. But anyway, after that debate, right, because of that defeat, you had your man Seti that stepped up and decided that he was going to avenge the Kemetic community. So he was going to take on Nasi Yashuvel. Now, because Nasi was an Israelite, I said to myself, this was a transition for me. I said to myself, at first I was debating, should I go, should I not go? I go, them Old Testament Israelites, to see us Messianics in there, they might act funny. But I said, you know what, F that, I'm going to go because this is an Israelite thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to sit in the back, mind my business. I'm just going to observe and see what goes on, see if I can pick anything up. So I went there, I saw Nasi did his thing. He put the smack down, you know what I'm saying? He put the smack down, you know what I'm saying? The stone cold stutter down on old boy, and he won that debate. So the Hebrew Israelites, we were 2-0. That night I saw AOC there. They went up, they met Nasi, so forth and so on, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really meet Nasi that night. I kind of went and I left. But then there was, because Kemet was, 0-2, they wanted to have another debate. And what had happened was, Reggie, Sonetta, they came to the ISUPK cookout, and Reggie, Sonetta asked me a question, and that's when I told Sonetta, why y'all always questioning us, man? It's about time that we question you guys. You guys always want to ask us questions. Now it's time for us to ask you questions. And then Reggie said, so I guess Kemet is on trial now. And I was like, yeah. And that's where that name came from, Kemet on trial, from that conversation that Reggie and I had. So the original team for Kemet on trial was supposed to be Tazariak, Nasi, and Hashar. But Tazariak spoke to the leadership of ISUPK, and they didn't want him. Yeah, they didn't want him doing it because Nasi was a Torah-based Israelite only. They didn't want him doing it. So Hashar told Nasi, well, let's bring Brother Danyaahla in. I think he'd be a good, part of the team. So that's when Nasi and I formed a relationship. First, he and I, and then that's after that I formed a relationship with Kashub the Danite. I met Nasi's father in the congregation of Shema Yisrael, and that is when I started really opening up to the Torah-based community. So to answer your question, I know it went all the way around the world. It was really no dilemma for me because I didn't have a relationship with the Torah-based Hebrew Israelite community until recently, the last few years. So it was No.
So y'all never even tried to have a meeting, sit down, meet, none of that?
It happened in the 90s, and I'll just, certain
Oh,
things.
yeah, I did have a run-in.
Certain things shouldn't, be said, and doesn't need to be said other than the people that participated, but it didn't end well. I'll just leave it there.
So
It did not end well.
brother,
And it was to the point where we didn't try it again.
I'm watching the comments. You ain't gonna have the people tear my ass up. All right. Talk to me. What was the whole sit down like? What was it about? Because yeah, so what year?
It was in the 90s. It was in the mid 90s. I actually went to, I attended a few of them. I'll give you one particular instance. There was an Israelite convention in Chicago that I went to, and we went there and we spoke, and we tore the house down. People loved what we said, so much so that some of the young men that was following these Torah-based brothers, they liked our spirit. They wanted to follow us. So the leaders had a meeting with us that night, and it didn't go well. Another time we went up to Buffalo, New York to teach, and we met a Torah-based Israelite congregation up there. It ended with them telling us to get the hell out.
And that's you putting it nicely.
That's me putting it nicely. So there's been many, many instances. We all know also that, and I'm going to phrase this in the best way I can, even the conversation that we had recently, which was last year, didn't end so well. Some friendships ended behind that with certain brothers.
You talking about with
Nasi's
father?
No, Nasi's father, Shema Yisrael.
No, I'm saying that's where y'all did it at.
That's where we did it at, and we still got love for those brothers. We still have a bond with those brothers. It's all good. You know what I'm saying? Big up to Shema Yisrael, Prince Sapor, Prince Nat, Shem Levy, all those brothers, man. Big up to those brothers. There's no animosity, even though we vehemently disagree with one another about who the Messiah is. But some friendships ended that night. It usually ends up that way worse in the 90s. I'll just leave it at that.
So in your mind own People, we was just experiencing some technical difficulty, and that normally does not happen. You see how clear this stream is? We go and then, so you know, I'm going to say, like our Levite brothers say, that's of the devil. That's of the devil. This stuff just cut up. That is of the devil, Priest Danyaahla. Please continue. You were saying with
So yeah, you asked me about my youth and was I involved in doing certain things. I grew up without parents. No, well, okay. Well, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
That's not fully true. My parents died when I was young. Okay, 12 to be honest. So I raised myself. So as a young man, a black man in America, raising yourself, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. You're gonna hang out with the wrong crowd. You're gonna do a lot of things that you regret in life, and that's me. I did that. I made a lot of mistakes. You know what I'm saying? And I did a lot of things in my life that I'm not proud of. I was a predator on my people, the way a lot of people that are not, the way that a lot of people that are not knowledgeable do to their people every day, and they just don't know. It's that old crabs in a barrel mentality. So I did that, and the scriptures tell us in the Apocrypha that when you seek the Most High, when you come back into this knowledge and you seek the Most High, you should seek the Most High 10 times more. So that's why I go as hard as I go for this truth, because when I wasn't in the truth, I went hard, man. Hard for evil, for wickedness. I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of, and I grew up and I regret it now that I have the knowledge.
Okay, I see JC, he basically said, he was there in Chicago. So in 1996. Right. So he's confirming with you.
Yeah, he was there. He sure was.
What you were saying.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Shout out to Global Media Inc. My man Basim.
Yeah, what's up, Basim? What's going on?
Peace to you. People check out his page. He got a good page too. You did a few work on there. That was absolutely very phenomenal, by the way.
All praise
I gotta say. Yeah. So that brings me into my next question.
Yeah, I haven't heard from my man. People that don't know me know that, I'm saying, once you get me going, I'm gonna say what's on my mind. I don't give a damn. I had that clown. I'm gonna call him what he is, a clown. I'm talking about Vocab Malone. This clown.
Oh boy.
He was on my. He was.
Coming more to the frame.
Yeah. He reached out to me because I made a statement. Gorilla Hebrew had a post on his page, and I just basically went on there and I said, man, I would feel so much better if I could just smack the shit out of him, right? So I guess he saw the comment, so he comes to me, oh, why'd you say that? You know what I'm saying? So he and I going back and forth, and so since I had his attention, I pointed out to him how he was making mockery of certain things that we as Israelites we teach. So I said, since you and I are talking, let me have you watch something, and I copied and pasted the lecture that I did on Basim's channel, and I haven't heard from that clown since. So, we'll see what happens with that. But go ahead. What was your next question?
And so, what made you such a good researcher? What was the foundation back then? Who really pushed you and, instilled it in you that you got to do this? This had to be happening. Because some people say, well, I heard the angels, and it was a calling from the Most High. What's your story on that?
My story on that is good old fashioned, just reading and researching, and that was instilled in me by my elders. Early on in the 90s, there was a series of videos. It was a 25-part series of videos called the Archaeological Research, and there was another series called 777. It was, at the time, it was VHS. These VHSs were being sold at the school. And at the school, you'd buy the VHS, you'd go home, you'd watch it, and you'd have the elders on there, and they'd be bringing out a lot of information that was way ahead of their time. Let me explain something to you, right? We can produce videos from the 70s with the elders saying that Caesar Borgia was the image of Christ. Can you show me anybody else that was saying that in the 70s besides the elders? Nope. That knowledge that's now worldwide that everybody repeats comes from the elders at One West. They were the first ones to bring that information out on a mass scale. That is a fact.
I'm sorry. I keep hearing One West, One West, One West. Was the name of the camp?
The name of the school was called the Israel. That's slang. The name of the school was called the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge.
Wait a minute.
The address.
Not ISUPK.
No, the ISUPK is a new ISUPK.
That's new.
That's a new ISUPK. It's not the original. I know this. Yeah. Well, I know it's gonna be controversial, and I want to shout out my brother, Captain Tazariak, but I got to keep it 100. You know what I'm saying? The ISUPK today is not 100% the same. Although the members are, the founder is, but it's not
Which
the
is
same.
General Yohana.
Yes, but it's not the same as the original ISUPK, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But to answer your first question, the elders had a series of videos, and on the videos, what they would do is they would pull out all their archaeological books, and they would saying to prove things that they were saying. And I felt it important even then, and we're talking about 92, 93. I felt it important that when I would sit there and I'd watch the videos and I would write down the name of the book. Right now, if you live in New York, you're familiar with Strand's Bookstore on 12th and Broadway. Strand's Bookstore is 4 miles. No, he said 8 miles. Excuse me, 8 miles of used books. Many of the books that the elders were bringing out were available at Strand's Bookstore back in the days. And I felt it necessary to go and get all those books because I knew that one day, when I made the same statements that they were making, somebody would think I'm crazy. So I had to be sure to have that information handy so that I could show people where I got the information from. That's why I collected all those books. That's why I read all those books, because I knew that day was coming. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew that day was coming. Now, to answer the second part of your question, your inquiry, the history of the ISUPK is something like this. All right, the ISUPK was founded by Abba Bivens, and then you had 7 leaders that were ultimately that ultimately came, and they were educated. Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Sometime around, and I'm Quadazop is on the comment board, so you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but sometime around 93 or 94, let's say around 93, 94, the ISUPK changed their name to the ICUPK. That's a fact.
They changed their name.
They changed the name from the ISUPK, which was the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. They changed the name from ISUPK to ICUPK, the Israelite Church.
And you was in there.
Yes, I was in there. Okay.
Continue.
So once they changed the name of the school, everybody was under the banner of that name of that school. Everybody was under the IC. There was no more ISUPK. So it was ICUPK all the way up until about 2000.
Hold on. Pause. I want to be clear. This is the same group that the head man that's in charge right now, General Yohana, he was also in there?
Yes. He was.
So you were under General Yohana?
I was not under General Yohana. No, I was not under General Yohana. General Yohana was a general in the school. He had 2 camps. He had the camp down in Philadelphia, which is where he's stationed at now, right? Mm-hmm. And he also was head over a camp here in New York. Again, the school was called the Israelite School of UPK, which eventually became the Israelite Church of UPK. And in that school, you had many different camps. What was a camp? A camp was a group of brothers that went out and stationed themselves at different strategic points throughout the city, and they taught. You had a camp in downtown Brooklyn, right? You had the SOT, the Sons of Thunder, okay? You had the camp that was in Times Square, that was Sons of Yahweh. You had the camp that was at 42nd and 8th, that was Mount Zion. You had my camp that was stationed in Yonkers, New York. We were the Children of Israel, so forth and so on. So General Yohana at the time, he had a camp both in Philadelphia and he had a camp here in New York. The name of his camp here in New York is Spirits of Fire. I was not in that camp. I was in Children of Israel. So he was a general. He was over me in rank in the school, but I wasn't in his camp. I had a general that was over my camp who I would directly report it to.
And who was that general?
His name was Danyaahla. Okay. Danyaahla was the name of the general. You've never heard of him, but the brother's name was Danyaahla. Now, right, so as I stated,
2000.
So the school changed its name somewhere around 93, 94 to the ICUPK. All of us under that umbrella went by ICUPK. I have flyers still. I could produce flyers from then, right, to show that the school was called the ICUPK. As a matter of fact, speaking about Dr. York, remember he wrote a book called 360 Questions to Ask the ICUPK. Not ISUPK, ICUPK. You can Google that as I'm speaking right now. 360 questions to ask the ICUPK because ISUPK changed their name.
And I think they also changed the book to Ask a Hebrew Israelite or something.
That was a separate book. They had 360 questions to ask a Hebrew Israelite. That was for all the camps. But then they had a specific book aimed at the ICUPK, which was us, right?
Okay.
Now, when the school split up in 2000, because there were many splits, but I'm dealing with the 2000 split, right? That is when General Yahana began calling his camp the ISUPK again. He took that name back. But from the time that the school, but as long as he was a member of that school, right, we were going by ICUPK, and then they changed the name again to what they call themselves today, which is the ICGJC, the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. That's what they are known as today.
Wait, who's known as that today?
That's the two elders that remain that were originally part of the ISUPK, the two elders, because some of them have passed away and some of them, are no longer,
So there's two.
There's two leaders
still alive right now
today that are members of the ICGJC, which before was known as the ICUPK, which before that was known as the ISUPK. That's the history of the school. That's verifiable by anybody that was there. I was there, so I know. Some people you'll talk to, they'll tell you what they heard. I was there, so I know. That's the history of that, and that wasn't even really, a primary topic that we were talking about. But yeah, that's the history of that.
Well, that is primary, being that that's your life story. You was in there.
Oh yeah, I was in there.
So you saw. So how did the splits make you feel?
I was devastated.
And where did you? Because if there's a split, you had to take a side.
Yeah, I took a side. I was devastated by the split. I'm not gonna put too much. It's enough people out here talking about what happened back in the 90s.
Actually, there's not. And nobody I ever heard in any interview gave what you just gave. So we ain't gonna downplay this, brother. The people watching ain't gonna let me. It's not gonna allow me to let you get away with that. And me just being here in your presence, I'm not able to allow you to get away with that. So please,
thanks, Joel.
Continue. How did it make you feel?
I was devastated.
Which group did you go to?
I was devastated by the split, which happened 95 going into 96. I was devastated by the split. When I first came into One West and I went through that 2-year program that they had called the Trooper Program, what I was learning, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, everything, I told myself I was never leaving that group, ever, and then here it is, 4 years later, I'm leaving. So I was devastated. I left, and half the school left and followed behind the man that was the leader at the time. His name was Marshall. And we went down the block and we formed the House of David, right? The House of David was where we went after we left the ICUPK. We formed the House of David. Yeah, I was devastated. I mean, what else can I say? It was a very traumatic for me because, I left behind some really, really good brothers, man, that I loved, when the school split. So it was painful, but it was necessary because the school had grown so large. And as usual, unfortunately, in any organization that our people run, corruption had seeped in to leadership, as in any organization. So no one out there could be like, well, nah, you name the organization, there's corruption in them all. There was corruption in the Nuwaubians, there's corruption in the Nation of Islam.
No, I'm talking about what you were part in, because
yes,
I know that had to take a toll on you, the corruption you were seeing. So,
of course.
One of the things that I always hear is that people basically started doing what the same Israelites was blaming. I want to make sure I phrase this correctly because I don't want to bear false witness. That they were the same thing they was blaming Dr. York for. They started doing
like what?
Saying that they're Paul.
Okay, yeah.
And
that was going on. That was going on. You had men that were calling themselves people in the Bible. They were saying that they were people in the Bible.
Their reincarnation of
reincarnated. They were people in the Bible. They were King David. They were John the Revelator. They were Paul. They were this. They were that. That was going on, and that's also gone on in other Israelite organizations. But like you said, we're talking about this one. That went on in there. Yeah, definitely, and that was part of. It wasn't the reason for alone, but that was part of the reason for the split.
So, any groups that the group that you end up being part of, what was it again?
The House of David.
The House of David.
Right.
Was anybody in the House of David saying, or the leader? Who was the leader of the House of David? That
was Marshall. Marshall was the man that at One West they were saying that he was King David.
Was he himself saying that?
Marshall, okay, I heard Marshall on several occasions. This is with my own ears, and other people may say different, but this is with my own ears. I heard Marshall on several occasions tell people stop saying that. I heard that absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt. I heard him saying that. He didn't always say it when it was said of him, but I did hear him say it on a few occasions to stop saying that. You know what I'm saying? So yes, they were the head teacher Ariah taught that Marshall was King David, and everybody that was in the school at that time, they would agree with it. They went along with it. And you have people now that try to revise history and act like they didn't. But you know what I'm saying? When I hear somebody say that they didn't, I know you was there. I'll call you a lie to your face because you did. You did say that. You know, we did say that. You know what I'm saying? And we don't have to be ashamed about it because at the time, I was young in this knowledge. You know what I'm saying? You really don't know better. You know what I'm saying? You get wiser as you get older, you travel, you experience things in life, you become wiser and you begin to see through BS. But a lot of times, that's why I don't fault nobody when they first joined the Nuwaubians and they believed that Dr. York was the Lamb and he was Michael, the Archangel, and he, you know what I'm saying, he has a certain trillion years of knowledge and he has 720 degrees of knowledge, 360 Earth and 360 terrestrial and all this other shit. I don't fault people because this is the man that's teaching you, right? So sometimes when somebody's teaching you and they're eloquent and they're loquacious, sometimes you kind of fall into their thing because you don't know the information that they know and you want to learn it. So I don't fault them. It's when you've been in an organization for a certain amount of time that you don't begin to see through certain things and mature. That's when I begin to fault you. You know what I'm saying? So
when did you okay, I understand that. When did you decide to say, I'm gonna branch off and I'm gonna make Lions of Israel?
Well, I was at the House of David for till about 98. The House of David till about 98. After 98, I basically was on my own. I used to have back then today we have the cell phones with the cameras and this with the camera. Back then it was a novelty for someone to have a video camera. Them joints cost a grip in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people today wouldn't understand, what you're paying for your cell phone. You know what I'm saying? You had to get a camcorder. The camcorder would cost what your cell phone costs, $500, $600, $700, $1,000. So I was one of the few people that had my own personal camcorder. And what I was doing was I became like a videographer, which is why I do that today too. I would go down to 14th Street and I would film Zabak and Bunloya because they had a camp called the House of Israel, right out of the House of David. They call themselves the House of Israel. They were down on 14th Street. So I would go down there every Saturday and I would film them even though I was no longer in the House of David. I would be out there with them from start of camp to the finish of camp. Every now and then, occasionally I would speak, so forth and so on, and I was out there with those brothers. From 98 till about 2003, about somewhere around then. And at that time, I began going out with a brother, in Jersey. He and I was going out and we were teaching in Jersey, By then I didn't have my video camera anymore, so a lot of that footage you'll never see. And then in 2006, the brother Bunloy, who formed the House of Israel with Zabak, he stepped away from that camp and he came to me and he's like, listen, let's you and I form a camp because we've known each other for years. And we founded the Lions of Israel. There's a saying that goes around that says this, right? It says, you want to be the change, you be the change that you want to see. I've been in Israel a long time, and there's a lot of great things and a lot of great memories that I would never change or exchange. But I'm also not going to sit here and lie and say that there was some things that need to be changed. And no one else was going to change it because some people are content with what they have, the organization that they're in, or they found that they're content with what they have.
So you saw them making a change, like the Christian church stealing the money.
Yeah,
I heard a few people
the
elders was driving Bentleys.
Yeah, there was a lot of.
So money. That is true.
That's true. That's a fact. There's a lot of stealing of money going on. There was a lot of oppression of brothers. Brothers would go out on the oil tables back in the 90s. That was a big thing, and they would come back. You have brothers with wives and children, and they would come back from the oil table having made a couple of $100 or whatever because it was big business back then. And you would have not the elders, not the leaders, but you would have some of the ranking men under them that would call what they call a sack day. The word sack is short for sacrifice day. So you come, out to work, you work your 8 hours. The scriptures say a man is worthy of his hire. You know what I'm saying? He's supposed to pay a man, you know. But what these dudes would do, they had something called a sack day, where you would come back and they would tell you, you know what? Well, out the blue, you come back. Today's a sacrifice day. You know what I'm saying? You got to turn in all your money. You go home with nothing, but you were standing out on your feet for 10 hours on the oil table. They would do that. It was mandatory. You know, brothers didn't even have a token to go home sometimes. You know what I'm saying? It was not good. There was a lot of things that went down that was not righteous, but these things have gone down in all organizations. No one is innocent. Whoever's watching this and you're like, oh wow, that's crazy. Believe me, something that you've been a part of, they was doing that stuff too, man. You know, we as black people, we're broken and destroyed, man. You know, and the scriptures even tell us about the leaders of Israel in ancient times that made merchandise of the people. So this is nothing new, you know. So we form lines of Israel in an attempt to be the change in Israel that we want to see, you know.
Okay, to sum it up, this is pretty much going to be my last question with your whole background. How does the effect of, with them saying chariots coming from the sky, how is that affected you then and affected you now? Because basically, being that your New Testament, deal with the New Testament, you see it as, do you see it as there's something to look forward to? Because a lot of Hebrew Israelites, that's Old Testament, and they say, well, basically God's going to crack the sky, he's going to come with the angels or whatnot. What is your take on that back then to now? Do you have a different stance on it now that you did back then?
No, my stance is the same. That Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shah, and the angels are going to come back and take down this white man and these other nations and set us up to rule on this earth. And I stand on that principle. You know, it's going to take a supernatural force. Well, this is, you know, again, this is a spiritual thing. So I'm not trying to convince anybody of this per se. You know what I'm saying? The scriptures say, let every man or woman be convinced in their own mind. So I can't convince you of nothing. I can only tell you my standpoint. My standpoint is right now, you have many nations that are nuclear powers. They have weapons that are powerful, that can pretty much wipe out the entire earth many times over.
Correct.
The so-called white man, he has been blessed with, the scriptures say Esau was blessed with the sword. And the so-called white man is blessed with weapons and weapon technology. He has weapons you couldn't even fathom. And sometimes he puts these things in movies as fiction, but he's actually experimenting with those weapons. Okay. We saw recently the so-called white man has an Iron Man suit that he's a lot
of people haven't seen that yet.
He's been testing. You saw it in the movies. You saw your man Robert Downey, and you said to yourself, well, this is great entertainment, but no, the so-called white man is actually building something like that. Okay. You go back and you look at that movie Hollow Man. You know what I'm saying? The so-called white man has technology like that. He has antimatter guns. He has kinetic energy weapons. He has all types of things that we could not imagine. I remember reading years ago, the so-called white man has a weapon. If he shoots, it's not even a bullet. If he shoots it at you, you defecate on yourself. That's a fact. Okay. Yeah, there was another. I don't want to say it wasn't during the floods in New Orleans, but it was recently over the last, let's say 2 or 3 years. I forget what disturbance it was, but they have the daggone Humvee, right? And on the back of the Humvee, it's something like a satellite dish, right? And what they were doing was they were driving through the city. There was some type of unrest in the city. I forget what the unrest was dealing with. And they turned that thing on, and the heat from that thing had people running for their lives. They didn't even have to shoot a bullet at you. The so-called white man has bullets that could turn a corner. Yeah, you shoot the gun, and the thing damn turns a corner. Not
just in like that movie Wanted, like it's for real.
Right. So you understand? So we're up against something that we can't even fathom or imagine. And this is just what they show us. We you know, what they don't show us, forget about it. You see? So it's going to take a supernatural power to come and deliver us from the situation that we're in. And that's written in the scriptures. And when you look at the so-called white man's movies, he's basically showing you that, but he's masking it in what is known as entertainment. Okay. When you look at that word Hollywood, right? Most people don't know the history of that word. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's not some innocuous word that just came about out of nowhere. The word Hollywood comes from the word Hollowed wood, right? Hollowed wood is something that the Druids used to use. They would fashion a magic wand out of hollowed wood,
Correct.
and they would put a spell on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Hollywood is another way of saying hallowed wood. It is the instrument that the elites use to put a spell on our people. They fashion the way that you think through their media, through their magazines, through their radio, through their songs, through their televisions, through their movies. So whatever they tell you is real, and whatever they tell you is fiction and you should laugh at it or whatever like that, you laugh at it or you think it's a joke. But sometimes in the midst of what you're laughing at or you taking as entertainment, there's elements and levels of truth in those things. And I'm telling you that a lot of these movies are showing you, what it is exactly that the so-called white man has or is planning to do. And he's showing you in these movies what he's planning on doing. He's telling you to your face. You know what I'm saying? We just are too asleep as a people to see it. That's why the Most High called us the Valley of the Dry Bones in the book of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. You know, because we're like animated corpses. If you ever saw The Walking Dead, that's our people. They're like animated corpses. They're walking around and they're moving. So you think that they're alive, but they're really dead. Because there's nothing inside that's going on, man, other than love and hip hop, basketball wives, LeBron James, the NBA, the NFL, you know what I'm saying? First Take, Undisputed, you know, Medea, and all that other garbage. That's all that's going on in the minds of our people. That's it. You know what I'm saying? They're ruled by entertainment. You can't, you know, I got people on my job, grown women, 40 and 50 years old, telling me that they can't live without their fix of reality TV. They have to watch, you know, Black China and Rob. They just have to watch that. Keeping Up with the Kardashians. They just have to watch that. You see what I'm saying? These are black people. It's a shame.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're being shot down in the streets unarmed, and all you care about is that Hollywood thing keeps us asleep. And see, I'll end it with this. You know what I'm saying? Unless you have another question. There's an old saying that says, those that don't know history are bound to repeat it. If you understood the Roman Empire, which America is an extension of the Roman Empire, we all know that. We can look at Congress. We can look at the way that some of the statues are built. America patterns itself after Egypt and Rome. Okay, you have a Senate. You have all these different things. You know what I'm saying? All the terms that they use in court are in Latin. Okay, so America's Rome all over again. If you study ancient Rome, right? In ancient Rome, in order to keep the populace from rioting, what would they do? They would have the gladiators go into the daggone arena, and they would have the gladiators fight lions and bears and each other, and that kind of kept the people entertained. They show you that in all these different movies. Well, that's what America's doing. America is distracting you with all these different things to keep you distracted from what's really going on. Don't you know that Vladimir Putin is talking to his people about World War III?
Stop right there.
Getting the Russians ready for World War III, the Chinese also.
Stop. Don't even continue no more. Because I also heard King Simon. Shout out to King Simon and shout out to Aton. They were saying the same thing. They were saying the same thing with telling them, yo, get, and those people don't play. If they saying get up for World War III,
yes, it's
gonna be real. So you're gonna need your monatomic gold, you're gonna need your bentonite clay, you're gonna need your hydrogen peroxide, your magnesium, your potassium. Long story short, you're also gonna need that Bible or some spiritual foundation. And yeah, I just want to say that and lock it in there. This been great, man. You dropped some jewels on here that a lot of people, I'm watching the people, they saying great interview. It's good to find out your untold story because I had no idea you were part of that history. You understand, with the changing and the split and whatnot. Some people see you and be like, oh, Priest Danyaahla, he a new jack.
Yeah.
He just hit the scene. You understand what I'm saying? So it's good that you gave that breakdown and that history. I want to thank.
How come you didn't ask me about this upcoming debate?
Nah. We're gonna save that. We're gonna have a part two. Well, not a part two, but where I'm gonna ask you some real questions on some, current conscious events.
Yeah,
all right. So
that's
people. You're a troublemaker, man.
Hey man, listen, I'm gonna say my piece. That's all good. Not now. Another time.
You've been watching Joel Benjamin 528, the untold story of Priest Danyaahla. Please stay tuned because we're going to revamp it right back again with another.
Black light, no, not evolution, not that debate. I'm talking about this other upcoming debate about the metal netter. We'll talk about that another time. Go ahead, bro.
All right.
Look at the comments.
We're going to have Doggy Diamonds. Yes, Doggy Diamonds. The untold story of Doggy Diamonds. And we are about to go in. So give me 5-10 minutes. We're about to set that up. All right. It's like back to back here at Nicholas Brooklyn 570 Fulton Street. We got the healing circle going on upstairs. Reiki, chakra therapy. Let's just go down the list. Reiki, chakra therapy, astrology, tarot reading, numerology, crystal chakra healing, all this good stuff, massages, all that. So, that's every Tuesday. We start at 5. Sometimes we don't end here till like 1:30. All right. This is something that we set up and do for the community. All right.
Listen, family, I just want to shout out real quick because he didn't ask me to do it, so he should have asked me. I want to shout out joelbenjamin528 family. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to his brother's channel. Y'all see where it's going. Go down the video list. Go down his list of videos and look at the work this brother has done in a short amount of time. If you give this brother 1 year from right now, this brother will have one of the biggest platforms on YouTube dealing with conscious information. Support him. Share him on your Facebook page, your Twitter, your Instagram, man. And let's blow this brother's channel up, man. Let's get him to where he needs to be because he is doing a fantastic job. Greg Wright, I see your comment, and I agree with you. I'm going to leave it at that. He said next interview. Yeah.
Real quick, just before we go off, we're going to go off real quick, but this is like the second time I've seen this. Who knocked out Zumbari's front teeth? You know who that is?
I don't know who Zumbari is. I don't know. Peace to you, Greg, right? You know what I'm saying? I appreciate you, King. I don't know who Zumbari is, so I see it's Tyrone Bell. Who is Zumbari or whatever? You talking about Zabak? And if so, I don't know of that incident, to be honest. I've never heard about that. I don't know about
that. I guess we just save it for.
So I don't deal with we don't deal with hearsay. So I don't know who you're talking about unless you could be a little more specific.
Well, we gonna save that for next time. Again, people, Joel Benjamin 528, the untold story of Priest Danyaahla from Lions of Israel. Check him out. Daniel Benjamin on Facebook. All right. Maccabeestv. Check him out. You got Instagram, man?
I got Instagram.
Come on, man. You slipping.
Instagram Priest _ Danyaahla _ Benjamin. I'll spell it. Priest should be. If you can't spell priest, then I don't know. You missed a couple of classes in school. Priest _ Danyaahla. DANYAAHLA. Oh, look, peace. MC Spookism. Look at that. Priest _ Danyaahla _ Benjamin. Priest _ Danyaahla _ Benjamin on Instagram. Follow me. And one last thing, family. For those of you that support, this channel for Brother Joel, please go over and subscribe to Maccabeestv, MACCABEES TV. Again, Maccabees, MACCABEES TV, where you can see more of me and other brothers. And you also will see this Brother Joel, who has done some fantastic interviews on health that's beneficial to all of our community. And it's something that we don't talk about enough. And last but definitely not least, I see you, Basim. Thank you. Our website is thelionsofisrael.com. Thelionsofisrael.com. Yes, Black Light. That's Maccabeestv. Maccabeestv. All right. So I'm gonna pass it back to the Brother Joel because I know he has to close out.
Yeah, the stuff is in the description box, so y'all check it out. Again, stay tuned. We're about to come up with Doggy Diamonds from Doggy Diamonds TV. If anybody's seen this brother, he's fire. Again, I want to thank the Honorable Priest Danyaahla. I know he dropped some information that y'all did not know. I didn't even know. Like, he hit us the boop, 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 boop.
Someone's asking you to type it out in the chat, even though it's in the description.
Nah, it's in the description. Y'all can check it out in the description. Again, thank you, Priest Danyaahla. Thank you for being out here. People, please don't forget to subscribe to Joel Benjamin 528 on Yahoo. You'll hear me, Yahoo, my bad. YouTube and Maccabeestv. on YouTube. Again, I'm Joel Benjamin, aka joelbenjamin528, aka MC Spookism. I hope I didn't get too spooky for y'all. You know, some of y'all out there that scared. Thank you. Peace.
Shalom, y'all.
Shalom, shalom.